All right, so hey guys. So last week what did we look at? We were looking at pawn endgames, right? So we were looking at the rule of the square, and I think that's what we mainly focused on. And we also did some like tactical themes, right? We looked at the pin and the fork. So I think we just went over all of that. So this week we're gonna do a new thing in the pawn endgames called opposition, which is extremely important. If you guys like if to win a pawn endgame, it's probably one of the most important things, even more important than something like the rule of the square. All right, so but before we get started with all that, let's just start with some tactics that uh about like the fork and the pin. All right, so we'll just do some basic tactics on the fork and the pin. All right, so most of these will just be stuff on the fork or the pin. All right. So try and find a way here to remember it's going to be a forcing move. So check, capture, or threat, and usually it's going to be a check. All right. And after that, you can try and tell me if it's a pin or a fork, basically. This is black to play. Viksha.
Bishop to d7.
Okay, Viksha says bishop to d7. Revanche.
Rook to d7.
Okay, Revanche says rook d7. And one more. Let's see, Dave.
I was about to say the same thing as Raymond.
Okay, all right. Then how about Mateo?
Rook c7.
Okay, and then rook c7. All right. Okay, let's just look at all three of these. All right, really quickly. So I'm just gonna play a random move. Okay, so we have rook e5, right? And now, is there any pin in this position right here? Can anyone see a pin? It's a pin for white. Okay, Ria Revanche.
Rook to d7.
Yeah. Okay, so we got the answer, but what is there a pin right now? Like if you're looking at white's perspective, you can see here that our bishop can't move because then our rook behind it is in danger, right? So that's the pin I was talking about. So here, that's the pin for against black. So black can't move his bishop because let's say I move my bishop here. Or I think one of the answers was bishop d7, right? It's not a bad move except for the fact that there's a pin here. Now that our bishop moved away, when our bishop moved away, now this rook is under attack, and black can take the rook with his rook. And now you might think, why can't we just take back? The problem is, white's king is also defending his rook. So now we just end up losing a full rook. So that's why bishop d7 doesn't work. So rook c7, it's not the worst move, except for the fact that this rook is undefended, right? So I can see the idea, you want to go rook c6, right? And that's checkmate next move. So that's a good idea, except for the fact that here, white can stop it because our rook is undefended, so he can take with his king. All right. So I think the right answer is rook to d7. All right, and you can see this. We're attacking the king, and behind the king is the rook. And does anybody remember? Is this the fork or the pin? When you're attacking one piece and it can't move because the piece behind is under attack. Dave?
It's a pin.
Exactly, it's a pin, right? A fork is when you're attacking two pieces at the same time. But this, you're attacking one piece, and that piece can't move because then a piece behind is under attack. So here, we're giving a pin, right? Now it's also a check, so the king has to move. So the only square for the king, does anybody know where the only square for this king is? Isa? Oh, you're on mute.
King to us. 5c.
Yeah, king to
C5.
c5. Yeah, king to c5. Nice. All right. One sec. I think. Can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. My
Yeah.
internet is like a bit.
Yeah.
My internet's not very good right now, so in case I end up like dropping out of the call for a second, I'll just be back in like a
Yeah.
moment. Okay. All right. So now king to c5, right? Now we can take this rook, right? That was the whole point. But if we take the rook, then white can just take our rook back, right? And now we gained a rook, and then our opponent gained a rook. So it was an equal trade. But here, can anybody see a way where we can force this king to move somewhere else? So then the next move we can take the rook for free. Basically, the king is defending the rook, right? Can we make the king move away so now it's no longer defending? Um, let's go Viksha.
The king can move to d5.
It's black to play. I'm asking for a move for black to force the white king to move somewhere
Oh,
else.
never mind.
All right. What about Mateo?
Never mind. I thought it was like,
You're on mute, Mateo.
Bishop to d5.
Okay, bishop to d5. What about anyone else? Let's go Revanche.
Rook to d5.
Rook to d5. All right. How about one more? Dave.
Rook to c7.
Okay. So, all right. All these answers are good, except they don't force the king to move away, right? So if you look here, rook to c7, that was a good check, right? You're forcing the king to move away, but it's no longer attacking this rook, right? Our rook is no longer attacking the opponent's rook. So even though we gave a good check, now we can't capitalize on the check, right? We can't take our opponent's rook. So it was a good check, except it didn't really give us anything. Dave, do you have a question?
No, I know the answer.
Okay, yeah, do you wanna?
Yeah, sure. Pawn to b6.
Nice, yeah, that is the right answer, alright? So and we'll get back to that in a second, alright? So let's just go through these other ones. So king to c we saw rook to c7. Alright, and another one was bishop to d5. The problem with this is it isn't a check, right? So the king is still defending the rook. Alright? And rook to d5, it's a good check, except black can take with his rook. Alright? And now we didn't gain anything. Alright, so b6. This is the right move. Now the king is being attacked by the pawn. So now once the king moves, he can't move to c4, right? Because then our bishop is guarding. He can't move here, so he can't because our bishop is guarding. He can move to c6 or b5 or b4. All of these three are possible options. So you might wonder, why is this a good move, b6? Well, now this rook is completely undefended, right? If the king was able to move to c4, then he could still protect his rook, right? And then we couldn't take. Except the king has to move somewhere else. He has to move away from the rook. And because of that, now we can just take the rook. Alright, and you guys can see that right here. Your rook d7, and then b6. Now you win the rook. Alright, do you guys have any questions? Yeah, Dave?
I never meant to.
Okay, alright. Alright, let's go on to the next. Alright, Alright, this one's a bit difficult, so let's go on here. Alright, Viksha. Oh, sorry, this is white to play, by the way.
Queen to E8. Wait, I have a question.
Yeah.
Can the kill if can the king kill the queen if the queen's at E8?
No, because the king can only move one square in every direction, right? So if the queen went to e8, then the king can't capture. So that was the right. All right. What about here? Now you'll notice it wasn't mate in one because now the bishop goes back to block, right? But look here. What's the problem? Can this bishop move?
No.
It's in a pin, right? Exactly. The bishop can't move because behind it the king is in danger. Now you have to find a way to use a fork attacking. So the first move, we used a pin, right? We got a pin. Now the second move here, you have to use a fork attacking the bishop and the king at the same time. And
The
how?
knights are the ones are good at forks, right?
Yeah, except in this case, it's not actually the knight. Because you see, alright, that actually brings up a good point. The knights are good at forks when two pieces are further away from each other. But right here, the pieces are right next to each other, right? The king and the bishop. So it's really hard it's right in this position, it's impossible for the knight to give a fork. It can't attack two pieces or two squares consecutively, right? So, like for example, this knight, it jumps in an L, right? But you'll notice it's attacking f7 and h7, but it can't attack the square in the middle. It can't attack g7, alright? So like that, it can't attack f7 and f8 and g8. So here we have to use a fork with a different piece. Revanche?
Queen takes pawn on f7.
Nice. Queen takes f7 check, alright? So here our knight's defending the queen, and our queen is attacking the bishop and the king, right? So now when the king moves, now what do we do? Dave?
We take the. We go to G8.
Well, if we go to g8, then the king will just capture the queen, right? Since we were able to attack the bishop, and now the king is defending the bishop, right? Now once the king moves, Isa? Isa, you're on me.
Um, queen to f8.
Nice, exactly. Now we just take the bishop, right? So that's the premise of the fork, right? We're attacking two pieces, so when one piece moves, then we take the other piece, alright? That's most of the time what we end up doing with the fork. Alright, what about here? Okay, so we, now we have to. I'll give you guys a hint, alright? We have to use one of our pieces to attack our opponent's rook and king at the same time. Revanche?
Queen to c2.
Okay, Revanche says queen c2. What about Viksha?
Queen to C3.
Alright, Viksha says queen c3. How about one more? Michael?
C to C to c4.
C2? So queen c2?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Alright, so another queen c2. Alright, okay. Now let's just look at all the options, alright? So, we have queen c3 and queen c2. Alright, so the problem with queen c2 is it is attacking both the rook and the king, right? Except for the fact that even though, or 1 second, let me just do this in a different tab. Okay, now queen c2, we're attacking the rook and the king, all right? But the main problem is that the rook can just take our queen, right? So even though we're giving a good fork, the problem with this fork is that black can just capture, or white can just capture our queen, right? So remember the three things you can do. Does anybody remember what the three things you can do when you're in check? Uh, Dave?
It's not that, but like also the pawn can take, which is a better way because the rook is attacking it too.
The pawn can't. Remember, the white is going down, so the
Oh
pawn
yeah.
can't take. All right, Isa, do you remember do you know the three ways to what white can do when he's in check?
Mm,
Oh, you're on mute.
I I'm not saying that, but I think I know how to do it, the fork.
Okay, yeah, do you have a answer?
Three queen to c3.
All right, okay, so queen c3. All right, and we'll look at that in a moment. All right. So right now, queen takes c2. Remember, the three things you can do when you're in check is capture, block, or move, right? So now white's in check, so he'll think, can I capture, block, or move? So white can move the king, all right? That's not or he can only move to a1. Actually, that's the only square. And he can't block the check, right? Because it's right next to each other. But can he capture? That's the main one. If white thinks about if he can capture, he can, right? Rook takes queen. And that's the best move. So white will just capture our rook. Or capture our queen, I meant. Alright, so queen takes c2 isn't the best. Adrian, do you have a question?
Yeah, I know about pin and fork because I listened to another chess class.
Okay, alright, nice. Uh, alright, so queen. Now let's look at queen c3. So this was the right option, right? You're attacking our opponent's rook, king, but we're also attacking the queen over here. If you guys didn't see, right? But now what will white play? What do you guys think white will play? So if he's in check, he can capture, block, or move. Revanche?
no, I was talking about the answer before.
Oh, okay. Uh, so do you have an answer right now? Like what do you think white will play when he's in check here? If he,
The queen could take.
exactly, right? Now white is gonna take back with his queen. It's capture, block, or move. And here the best move is to capture. Because if he moves his king, he's gonna lose the rook, right? And he can't block, so he's gonna try and capture back. And now what do we capture back with? The pawn or the rook? I'm gonna take a poll from you guys, alright? I'm gonna ask each one of you, and each of you guys tell me if I should take with the pawn or the rook, alright? How about, let's start with Isa. Just say pawn or rook, you don't need to give an explanation.
Pawn.
Okay, and let's go Dave.
Uh, pawn.
Alright, Adrian,
Pawn.
Viksha,
Pawn.
Mateo, pawn, okay. I think you're on mute, but I see what you're saying. Alright, Tabit,
Pawn.
alright, Revanche,
Pawn.
and Michael.
Rook.
Okay, alright, so now most of you guys said pawn, right? And so pawn, the reason that this is actually right is because the you're attacking both the opponent's rook and king at the same time, right? And this is a fork because we're attacking two pieces at the same time, right? So now that's why look here. So first we did a fork with the queen, right? Attacking three pieces. And now, once he takes back our queen, once white takes back our queen, now we can take with the pawn. White can't capture our pawn because our rook is defending. So now once he moves his king, we can win the rook. Alright? And rook takes okay, here, rook takes c3. It's not a bad move, right? You can take back with the rook. There's nothing wrong with it, except it's better in this case to take back with the pawn because you can now give this nice fork attacking our opponent's king and rook. King and rook. Alright? So do you guys have any questions about this one? No? Okay, so then now I think that's good enough for now. We'll continue doing more of these as we keep going. We only did 2 today, but then they were pretty advanced ones. As we keep going, I'm gonna give like less instruction per puzzle, and then we'll just get like 5 or 10 done in one sitting, alright? But for now, let's go to the classroom. Okay, so what we did last week, we were looking at the rule of the square, right? And I think most of you guys had that pretty much finalized by the end of class. I remember I did like a small quiz and all of you guys gave the right square and what it was. So that's pretty good, alright? So I'll bring that up maybe like sparsely in the next few classes, alright, just for you guys to get like a little review. But right now we're gonna move on to another important thing in pawn endgames, alright, and that's called opposition. Okay, so let me show you what that is, alright? So this is the example I usually give for opposition. You might remember it from last year if you guys took this class last year. Alright, but opposition is basically something that's super important in an endgame, alright? Especially a pawn endgame, okay? So this is just an important like quote in chess, like something that's pretty famous, and that's that the king is the most important piece in the endgame, alright? And that's especially true in pawn endgames, right? If you just have pawns, it's super hard to win. But with a pawn and a king, you can try and use your king to help your pawns or capture some of your opponent's pawns, right? When there's no other pieces except just pawns and kings, your king becomes infinitely more valuable, right? It's so useful. You can use it to maneuver anywhere you want. So what this opposition is, like rule of the square, it's only used when the pawn is on the A file or the H file, right? But the opposition is something you can use in any endgame, just any pawn endgame. It can be used in any endgame, but it's most commonly seen in pawn endgames, alright? And it's basically has to do with the two kings, alright? The white king and the black king, alright? So now, I just want to give an example, alright? Now imagine that the white king and a black king are in a race, alright? Now the white king wants to get out here, alright, to the 8th rank. And the black king, he wants to do the opposite. He wants to get over here to the 1st rank, alright? Now whoever gets to the other side first wins, basically, alright? So now, if you'll notice, let's say that white and black both just kept moving. You'll notice that they got there in the same amount of moves, right? It took 7 moves for each of them to get to the other side, right? The white and black king just kept on moving forward, right? But with opposition, there's a way where you can get white's king to actually get there faster than black's king. Alright, and I'll just show you how that works, alright? So opposition is basically a strategy where you put your king right next to your opponent's king, alright? And I don't mean like right next to like one square, like leave one square gap and they're basically facing off against each other, alright? You guys see here that white king is on e4, the black king is on e6, and there's one square in between, right? And this is called opposition, alright? They're opposing each other, basically. They're on opposite sides, right next to each other. So now, why do we do this, alright? Let's say, okay, let me just delete this whole thing. So, right now, you can see here, white's played 3 moves, and black has played 2 moves, right? So now, let's say, now it's black's move right here. So, where can black go? Notice the main point of opposition is your opponent's king can't move forward. That's the main point, alright? So you can see here, if you're black, or if you're white, you're guarding these three squares and then these two squares on the side, right? You're also guarding these three squares behind you, but that doesn't really matter. Alright? Now, if you're black, you want to go forward, right? If you can go forward, you can win the race quicker, right? But the problem is, as black, remember, the king can only move one square in front in any direction, right? So the black king wants to go to d5, e5, or f5. But can the black king go to any of those squares? Viksha?
So the question is, can the black?
Can the black king go to d5, e5, or f5?
No,
No, exactly. And why is that?
because the is guarding all those spots.
Exactly. Our king is guarding all those squares, right? So the black king can't move forward. It can only move side to side or back. Alright? And in a race, imagine you're watching the Olympics, right? You never see the athletes go backwards. They only want to go forwards. So if the king's trying to win the race, and now he can't go forwards, so now that means he has to go to the side or back, right? And that's not very good. So how about the king goes to f6, alright? Now, the black king was guarding through these two squares too, right? Now imagine in this position, it's white to play. It's not black to play, alright? Now, can our king go to d5, e5, or f5? Isa? Oh, you're on mute.
No,
No, exactly. And why is that?
because then the other king will take him.
Exactly. Now the black king will then take back, right? So the black king is also guarding these three squares. So, the black king and the white king are both guarding the same exact squares. And depending on whose move it is, they have to move to the side, right? And that leaves something called a hole in the wall, right? Dave, do you have a question?
No.
Okay, alright. I'll just lower your hand for you then. Okay, so now here it's black to play, alright? And he has to move to the side. And black is guarding d5, e5, and f5, and so is white, right? Now once the king goes to f6, what are the three squares in the front that black is guarding? So from this example, what squares in the front is black guarding? Dave?
It's blocking E5, F5, and G5.
Nice, exactly. It's now blocking e5, f5, and g5, right? Now notice, before it was blocking d5, e5, and f5, right? But now, once it moves here, this d5 square is no longer defended. And what does that mean? Well, now
You
there's
can take it.
exactly. Well, there's nothing to take there, but yeah, you can move your king there. There was a hole in the wall. Now you can fill that hole with your king. And now notice, the black king moved to the side, but the white king, we still got to move forward. Every move he played so far, the white king moved forward. See? And now, by using opposition, the black king was forced to go to the side, and that left a hole in the wall, and that allowed our white king to take that hole in the wall. Now notice the difference, alright? Let's say they keep moving. Now notice, it took the black king 8 full moves to reach the other side, but our white king got there in 7 moves. So we forced our opponent to take an extra move to get to the end of the board. So you could say that the white king won this race, right? Because after 7 moves, black's king still isn't on the first rank, but white's king already is. So white won this race. And you might be wondering why this is useful in pawn endgames, and I'll show you that, alright? In in a bit later, alright? But for right now, let's just focus on opposition and understanding what it is, alright? So, I'm gonna give you guys a few examples, and you guys tell me whether the two kings are in opposition, alright? Remember, opposition means that the 3 squares in front of the king, they're all guarded, alright? They're all guarded. So here, e5, f5, and d5. Or for here, c5, d5, and e5, both kings are guarding those 3 squares in front of them. So they're in opposition, All right. So what about here? Are these two kings in opposition? If anyone raised their hand, I can call on you. Viksha?
I didn't raise my hand.
Okay, all right. Revanch?
They're not opposition.
All right, exactly, right? So here, the two kings are not directly in front of each other, right? You'll see that they're like a knight's move away, right? And because of that, the white king is guarding e6, d6, and c6, but the black king is guarding d6, c6, and b6. So you'll notice that it's disconnected, right? And because of that, white's king can go to e6 and black's king can go to b6, right? So they're not in opposition here. All right, what about now? Now are the two kings in opposition? Viksha?
Yes, they are because they're guarding the same blocks.
Exactly.
Of
They're
course.
guarding the same squares in front of them, alright? Now let me give you a few more examples. Alright, what about now? Are the two kings in opposition? Mateo?
No.
Exactly. Now here, it's even more disconnected, right? They're only both guarding e4, but then the black king is guarding d4 and c4, but the white king is guarding f4 and g4, right? So these two kings are completely not in opposition, alright? Okay, what about now? Are the two kings in opposition? Michael?
Yes, they are because they both are like near the square.
Yeah, exactly. They're both guarding the same squares. Nice. So the white king is guarding d4, e4, and f4. The black king is guarding d4, e4, and f4 as well. Alright, let me give you guys a tricky example. Alright? What about here? Are the two kings in opposition? Dave?
No.
Alright, so this is like an interesting one. It's depending on your perspective, you can consider it opposition. Once we get more advanced, you'll realize that this is like it's a type of opposition. It's called side to side opposition. But for now, it's not really useful to us. Like when the two kings are side to side, it doesn't really help us. So we'll just call this is not a type of opposition, right? Because this white king, it can still move up. The black king, it can still move down, right? The only thing is the black king can't move to the right, and the white king, it can move to the left, right? They're guarding the same squares on the side, but in front of them, they're guarding completely different squares, right? So because of that, let's just say for now, this is not an opposition, alright? Okay, let's look at a few more examples. Alright, what about here? Are the two kings in opposition? Isa? You're on mute.
No.
No, exactly. Here, the black king is guarding these three squares. The white king is guarding these three squares. And the only one in common is f4. So the other two squares are not in common. Alright, so I think you guys mostly got the gist of it, right? Viksha, do you have a question?
No, I accidentally pressed
Okay,
it.
alright, yeah. So this is what opposition is, alright? So basically it's a way for white, or not just white, but either side, you put the two kings directly opposite of each other, and because of that, one king has to be forced to move to the side. They can't move in front of them, alright? So, uh, so you guys get the gist of that, right? And I don't think you need a specific example about that. So for now, let's just move on to why this is useful, alright? So this is its opposition is super useful in pawn endgames where white or black only has one extra pawn, right? Let's actually look at this from black's perspective because I feel like we've been looking at everything from white's perspective because then you won't always end up just playing white, right? So let me flip. Alright, here. We are now playing black in this position, right? So first of all, the first thing you want to do in these kinds of positions is where you are only up one pawn, right? What's the winning method? What do you guys want to do? Like, what should you do with the pawn? Revanche?
I'm making the pawn a queen.
Exactly. You want to make the pawn a queen, right? If you make the pawn a queen, then you can promote with the queen and king versus king. And what is the square that this pawn turns into a queen? Remember, black is going up. What is the square that this pawn will go turn into a queen? Isa, you're on mute. Isa, you're on mute.
It could be on D1 or E1 or F1 or G1 or H1 or.
Well, actually, no. You're close, but the pawn can only turn into a queen on d1, right? It's the square directly in front of it. If there was like another piece where white or black could capture a pawn, right? Like let's say there was another pawn here and here, then maybe black could capture and then turn into a queen on g1. But there's nothing else for black to capture, right? So in this situation, the black pawn can only move straight up, and that square is d1, right? So this pawn will turn into a queen on d1. Alright, so now we have to use opposition, alright, and I'll just show you how it works. So here, how does black get the opposition? And basically what it means to get the opposition is that black is the one that puts their king directly in front of white's king. So where would you go? Viksha?
To move white king to e1.
It's black to play. Where would
Oh,
black play to get the opposition?
I mean black to d3.
Nice, exactly. The black king would go to d3. And now we have the opposition. Oh, not like that, like this. Alright? Now the white king, it can no longer move forward, right? It can only move to the side. So where do you guys think the white king should move? E1 or C1? It doesn't really matter. Talha? Or sorry, Tabit.
E1.
Alright, E1. Alright, let's make the king go to E1. Alright? Now here's the steps when you're in this kind of situation, alright? So we're almost at 7:45, so the class is almost over, but I just want to get this over with real quick. So we use opposition. We have the rule of the square, and that's used when one of our pawns is on the side files, right? And now we have opposition, and this is mainly used as a technique when one of our pawns is on the G through B files. So if our pawn is on the G, F, E, D, C, or B files, then we use opposition to win, right? And opposition also has a few other like techniques. It's called flanking and stuff like that, which we'll learn more about in the next classes. But for now, we'll use opposition from the G through B files and rule of the square if we're on the H file or A file, alright? So there's a few step strategy what we want to do for trying to turn into a queen when we're on the G through B files, right? So right now we're on the D file, right? What I mean by we're on the D file is our pawn is on the D file. Okay, that's what I mean. So our pawn is on the D file, and the first step is to determine what square is our pawn gonna turn into a queen, and that square is I think Isa said was D1, right? So now we've determined the queening square. Number two is to get the opposition. And this is always going to be important. I'll show you more next class. But it's important because we want to get the opposition. And after that, then we can, number three, the third step, is take control of the square which our pawn turns into a queen. So if you're here, I'll just show you real quick. The right move is king c2. And now we want to take control of the square where our pawn is about to turn into a queen, alright? And now once we do that, then we can just move our pawn up and turn it into a queen, right? So this is like multi-step process. So there's the first step here is we determine the queening square, right? We want to get our pawn to turn into a queen on d1. Number 2, we get the opposition. And number 3, we take control of the queening square. And after that, number 4, we just start moving our pawn up, alright? And it will turn into a queen. And after this, I trust that you guys will be able to win this position, alright? We might do like 1 or 2 examples just to get a refresher on how to win this, like this kind of position, right? But as a basic, remember, you keep your queen a knight move away from your opponent's king, alright? And then eventually they'll be pushed into the corner. And once our opponent is in the corner square, remember, if we move a knight move away, it's stalemate, right? We don't want that. Our opponent's king can't move. And if they can't move and they're not in check, then it's stalemate, right? So what we want to do here is we want to keep our queen 2 squares away from our opponent's king. And after that, they just move back and forth. You bring your king and you can win the game. Alright? So that's the basic premise of that. So first, over here, we determine the queening square, then get the opposition, and then take control of the queening square, and then just move your pawn forward into a queen. Alright? So there's a 4-step process for winning these kinds of pawn endgames, alright? And we'll go more in depth into these specific examples in the next coming classes, alright? We'll also go back to the rule of the square. But right now, does anybody have any questions on what we learned so far? Any questions? No? Okay. Alright, then if you guys don't have any questions, then I will see you guys. Actually, a quick announcement. So, uh, we're gonna be starting in-person classes at Natoma Station starting next Monday. So instead of having these online classes on Monday it'll be from 5 to 6 p.m. at Natoma Station, and we'll have it in person because I feel like it's more interactive, right? We can play some games instead of just focusing on classes all the time. So on Mondays it's gonna like we're shifting the schedule. So Mondays we'll play mostly games, learn maybe like not learn a lot of openings, but basically just to practice playing against someone else and playing chess basically on Mondays. And on Wednesdays we'll do an actual class like this. It'll still be online, and on Wednesdays I'll we'll continue learning about pawn games and stuff. All right. So if you guys want to sign up for that, I think I sent you guys the information or to your parents on an email, so you
I
can check
hear
that out
that.
later. All right.
You don't hear.
So, um, if you guys want to sign up for that, just go fill out that form, and yeah, that's basically it. All right. So in-person classes starting next Monday. All right. If you guys have any questions, you can stick around for a moment. But if you don't, then I will see you guys this Wednesday. This Wednesday is still gonna be an online class. All right. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye. I'm staying here forever.
All right. No questions?
I have a question.
Yeah. Okay, Dave.
Wait, wait. When are we gonna keep coming to like? Are we gonna go to the library or somewhere else?
It might be like one of those like small classrooms, but cause I think someone is just like student care on uh, but during then like in the library, so it might just end up being one of the classrooms, right? But yeah, I'll send more information about that later.
Okay.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Bye.